Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the millionaire Fastlane. Most people do not retire rich, they retire old. Just let that sink in for a second. The real problem with a traditional money plan isn't that it never works. It's that even when it does work, it might just cost you your absolute best years. This is the uncomfortable truth at the very heart of our explainer today. We're constantly taught to praise the get-rich-slow strategy, right? You know the drill: clipping coupons, canceling your morning coffee, relentlessly saving for tomorrow that is literally 40 years away. But when we strip away all that societal applause, the reality is pretty harsh. Is a plan that literally demands the sacrifice of your youth, your energy, and your most vibrant years actually a blueprint for success? It begs a really serious question. What if the normal path to wealth is actually designed to make freedom arrive way too late? Think about the narrative we are fed from day one. Go to school, get a good, secure job, save 10% of your income, max out that 401k, and put it all in the stock market. Then, someday, magically, when you're 65 years old, you'll finally be rich. This whole script is basically a decree to trade life for life. It completely assumes you're going to be gainfully employed forever and that the markets will just always behave perfectly. It asks you to barter the youthful exuberance of today for the elder entropy of tomorrow. Picture this. Imagine you're watching an old episode of MTV Cribs, and there's this 22-year-old millionaire standing in front of a sprawling beach mansion with a whole fleet of supercars. If the host asked, "Hey man, how did you afford all this?" and the kid replied, "Well, I got rich chilling in mutual funds and popping money into my 401k down at my cell phone store job." I mean, you'd laugh, right? It's completely absurd. The reality is that young, self-made wealth is almost never achieved through standard linear savings. DeMarco argues it's achieved through business, leverage, and scale. Now look, we aren't here to glamorize luxury, and we definitely aren't promising guaranteed wealth. This is absolutely not some get-rich-quick scam. But we have to be intellectually honest here. The math of extreme wealth creation looks wildly different from the math of standard retirement planning. When we actually map out this default timeline, we see exactly what DeMarco calls the slow lane. 4 years of university, followed by 40 agonizing years of grinding at a job, saving and investing, all for the mere hope of freedom decades later. It feels safe, it feels normal, it's totally socially approved. But the hidden cost of this default road is just astronomical. You aren't just paying with money, you're paying with your time, your health, and your options. The default return on your time in the slow lane is inherently negative. Think about it. You're trading 5 days of work just to buy back 2 days on the weekend. The slow lane arrogantly assumes you're going to live forever. Which brings us to this really sobering metaphor: wealth in a wheelchair. The author points out a pretty glaring issue with the get-rich-slow formula. Wheelchairs don't exactly fit in the trunks of Lamborghinis. Wealth is best experienced while you are young, vibrant, and fully able to enjoy the freedom it actually provides. If your wealth strategy requires your dreams to be put on life support until the absolute twilight of your life, well, it's a sucker's bet. The true golden years of your life are right now, while you're sentient and active, not just when you finally cross an arbitrary retirement age. So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding why the slow lane fails mathematically. The book pins this failure on a concept called uncontrollable limited leverage, or ULL for short. If your wealth strategy relies on getting a great paying job and investing in the market for 50 years, you are entirely trapped by variables you can't control and you can't leverage. First off, your income is intrinsically linked to time. There are only 24 hours in a day. That's your limited leverage. You literally cannot work 1,000 hours in a single day. On top of that, you have uncontrollable variables because, let's face it, you don't control the stock market, you don't control your employer's corporate decisions, and you definitely don't control macroeconomic crashes. But look, realizing all of this isn't some overnight magic trick. The author shares a very honest, gritty struggle phase. At 26, DeMarco was still living with his mom, bouncing around between dead-end jobs, and dealing with serious depression and debt. He talks about this one college road trip where his old Dodge Duster broke down in the middle of nowhere, just surrounded by cornfields, light years away from the sunny Florida beaches they were actually aiming for. Honestly, that broken-down Duster is the perfect metaphor for a stalled life plan. The pressure from society, and even from your own family, to just conform and get a normal job is immense. It's so vital to acknowledge this reality. Real success is not easy, and the path is absolutely filled with failed ventures and collapsing cards before any real breakthroughs ever happen. But then, there was this massive, cinematic turning point that altered his entire trajectory. It was the Lamborghini epiphany. As a teenager, the author saw a young guy driving this mythic Lamborghini Countach. Naturally, he assumed the driver had to be a lottery winner, an actor, or some famous athlete. But when he actually walked up and asked the guy what he did for a living, the answer was shockingly simple. The guy just said, "I'm an inventor." Bam! That was the moment of psychological shift. It was the sudden realization that massive, rapid wealth could be created by normal people without fame, without insane physical talent, and without a massive inheritance. It proved that wealth is created by providing immense value, not just by selling your time. And this epiphany completely unlocked what DeMarco calls the Fastlane roadmap. To escape the slow lane, you have to fundamentally switch your allegiance. You have to go from being a consumer to being a producer. For the author, this meant a hard pivot from selling his time doing hourly web design to building a global limousine directory website. Instead of just trading his hours for dollars, he built a system that solved a real, tangible market problem, connecting travelers with limo companies. That website became a machine. It captured emails, generated leads, and pulled in revenue 24 hours a day. Whether he was sleeping, eating, or out with friends, it worked. He officially shifted from manual labor to an industrialized wealth system. Now, the most fascinating aspect of this entire transition is the underlying math. He moved from uncontrollable limited leverage to controllable unlimited leverage, or CUL. This right here is DeMarco's absolute mathematical antidote to the slow lane. CUL is a wealth environment where the variables are practically unlimited, and most importantly, they are controlled by you, the system creator. When you build a scalable business, your upper speed limit is determined by the market itself. If you can reach millions of people over the internet, your leverage is virtually unlimited. You are no longer caged by the 24-hour day. Let's put these two universes side by side because it really grounds the whole argument in objective reality. The slow lane, which is driven by ULL, sells time for money, period. The fast lane, powered by CUL, completely divorces wealth from time. The slow lane is strictly physically bound by 24 hours, whereas the fast lane offers unlimited scalability. In the slow lane, you're constantly at the mercy of employers, HR departments, and the whims of Wall Street. In the fast lane, you are the system owner. You sit at the top of the pyramid. You are building the roads rather than just walking on them. This isn't just some fluffy motivational theory. It is a literal shift from linear mathematics to exponential mathematics. Which brings us directly to DeMarco's actual Fastlane wealth equation. Wealth equals net profit plus asset value. When you step into the fast lane, your wealth isn't determined by hourly wage multiplied by hours worked anymore. Instead, it's driven by net profit, which can scale infinitely based on units sold, and asset value, which is the actual marketplace worth of the system you've built. The rich get rich by creating and manipulating appreciable, controllable assets. A business system is an asset. It holds value completely independently of the time you put into it today. Let's make this super tangible. How do you actually break that time for money chain? Well, let's use DeMarco's own book as an example. Step 1, create the asset. He writes a book, just once. Step 2, market the asset. He goes on and does a quick 10-minute radio interview. Step 3, leverage the asset. That single 10-minute interview generates 1,000 sales instantly. That's $5,000 in pure profit for literally 10 minutes of real-time effort. That is an effective rate of $30,000 an hour. I mean, can you get rich trading your time for $30,000 an hour? Absolutely. That is the sheer power of replacing linear income with an exponential, scalable asset. The system does all the heavy lifting for you. Now, to make sure your business is actually a fast-lane vehicle and not just another grueling job in disguise, the book outlines 3 key supercharger principles. First up, automate. Your business has to honor the commandment of time. It literally needs to survive your absence and yield passive income. Second, replicate. You need to expand to a playing field where home runs can actually be hit, taking your solution to a global level. And finally, scale. The law of affection simply states that to make millions, you must impact millions. Owning a business is a life sentence if it constantly requires your manual input. You've got to build money trees that can grow without you constantly standing there with a watering can. So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with one final provocative thought. The fast lane is definitely not about going out and buying a Lamborghini tomorrow. It's about fundamentally shifting how you perceive time and value. The real lesson here is to stop making your time your only product. So don't ask, how do I get rich fast? The much better, much more powerful question to ask yourself is this: what can I build that creates value without requiring my life hour by hour? The normal money path might be safe, but it might not be designed for the life you actually want to live. It's time to start thinking about building systems, solving real problems, and taking absolute control of your own mathematical universe. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer, and I seriously challenge you to take a hard look at your own roadmap today.